Let's see if this works. Hmm. There we go. I did it. Oof. Okay. Hola, hola. My name is Claudia Parada, associate marriage and family therapist in California and holistic life coach for first gen Latinas. So today we're going to be talking about letting go of guilt and setting boundaries. So this is a biggie, I think, for a lot of us because if you're like me, you grew up where prioritizing the needs of other people um, were were just the norm, right? Like this is the way that we're taught to do things. Like it was revered, it was valued. Like this is, as a Latina, this is a collectivist value that it is that we have almost like inherently in our culture. And maybe it's not a monolith, but generally speaking, yes, like especially as a woman, prioritizing other people's needs is usually what we're taught, right? But we're not going to go too far in depth with that today because today we're going to be talking about okay, so how do I let go of guilt when I'm setting a boundary? So maybe you've been practicing setting boundaries, practicing asserting and expressing what your needs are, and you're been working on that communication. But then after you do that, you feel really guilty about it afterwards, which is really, like that can be a difficult emotion to manage. So I'm going to be talking about a few things and how I work with my clients and my own experience around guilt. So, hopefully, you'll find this useful. And also, if you have questions, drop them in the comments and I will see if I can see them again. Can't always see the comments, but work with me, work with me. Okay. So, first and foremost, I always like to draw on guilt as a teacher, right? So this comes from Mesoamerican traditional medicine, and guilt is an ide. And ides are sacred teachers. And so a lot of times feeling guilt is really uncomfortable and we want to look, queremos deshacernos de él, right? Like we want to just disconnect. We don't want to feel it. It's seen as bad. We're like, oh, I don't want to feel guilty. So like, so I want to invite us into a reframe around guilt and see guilt as our sacred teacher. And the question that I always pose to folks that I'm working with is, so what did guilt come here to show you and to teach you? And really what my maestras told me around guilt is, so guilt is asking you to really investigate and reflect on what is your value here and what is just and right. And so there's a lot of different ways that you can look at this, right? So if you're feeling all the feelings around guilt, around setting your boundaries, then the first thing that I want to ask is what is it here to teach you? What is it showing you? And that could be done in journaling, in meditation, in reflection, or in conversation with somebody like a friend or a coach or a therapist. Um, and a lot of times it could be many different things. It could be like, I feel like I'm letting this person down, or it could be, this person really showed up for me. I want to be able to show up for them, but I can't. So it could be many different things. It's really going to be personalized to you. But really, it is going to be more often than not revealing something that is important to you. It's going to be pointing you in the direction of what your value is. So that's number one. Let me know if you have any questions around that. The second thing is that guilt is an emotion that we feel. We experience our emotions in our body, or in our imagery, in the way that we like posture our body. And so, my next question, if someone is experiencing guilt, is going to be okay, so where do you feel that in your body? Where are you holding the guilt in your body? What sensations or images are coming up as you are kind of like touching into that guilt? Sometimes this can be like if you're really used to kind of like identifying what your body is feeling, this can feel like a really easy thing to kind of name and rattle off. Or it could be that like that's a little bit more challenging for you. And that's fine. Like we're all on this journey around like connecting to whatever our emotional experience is. So wherever you are on that, that's totally okay. We're just really more interested in like going into that inquiry around like, what is it like to kind of like let yourself experience the guilt? So for me, when I feel guilty, it usually feels like almost like a pulling down motion, like right underneath my belly button, where it's like, oh, you can't really see my body, but my shoulders curve in, and then like they go, I want to look down. I'm feeling really bad. And it's all kind of like coming in and centering um, like right behind my belly button. So I almost like want to like shrink in. And so what I want to invite into that is like, well, what is the natural next movement or gesture or contact with your body that it is that you may be naturally wanting? So, like, if I'm wanting to curve in, like, what kind of support is my body needing to help me move through that guilt? So that could be like swaying or rocking or just like putting a hand on my belly button and just being like, okay, like I'm acknowledging you. So it could be different for you. These are just some options again. Um, and that's really going to help you acknowledge in your physical experiences, like um what's happening for you. So you're not doing that disconnection thing where you're like, I don't want to feel the guilt. I just want to get rid of it. You're actually leaning in and supporting yourself move through it. I know we talk a lot about like release the guilt and let it go. And ultimately, we are going to get there. And like we want to support ourselves and stay in connection to the experience that is like really real and happening, right? And so the last part, I'm just looking at my notes here because I'm like, what is it that I want to say about this? And so the number three, the last thing that I want to say is, so what is it like? What is as you're contacting that like part of you that is holding the guilt in your body? What is the thought or the belief that's attached to it, right? Like if I do this or don't do this thing, right? Like if I assert this boundary and I'm feeling guilty around it, like what is the belief that is attached there? So sometimes we have to go like sometimes you have to do a little bit of exploration around this. Like, oh, for me, a lot of my story is I'm afraid this person's going to feel disappointed or is going to feel like I'm not showing up for them or I'm going to miss out in some way and I'm going to fall out of connection with somebody, right? So I'm talking about like an interpersonal boundary assertion here. But then there's probably something else underneath that, and this is where journaling or talking it through with somebody can be really helpful because underneath that is going to be like, well, I have a real need for connection and I have a real value, like something that's important to me and my values is like being there for people when they need me, but also being there for myself. So these kind of values are starting to get illuminated in this process where I'm doing a reflection. And so if you ask yourself, well, when I'm holding this physical sensation in my body as I think about guilt, what is it that arises in terms of my thoughts and beliefs? It lets you recognize and kind of like start to parse out what's there and also speak to it too. So, like, if you are in a relationship with somebody where you are expressing your boundaries and it's safe to do so, you can say, like, hey, this is actually something that's really hard for me. I want to be able to show up for you, but I also got to show up for myself. And like, y'all can talk about that, right? So boundaries can look like a ton of different ways. So I'm just throwing out some examples out there. Let me see if there's comments. No comments. No comments yet, but if you have questions, let me know. So those are the three things that I want to invite you to if you're considering how you want to let go of guilt when you're setting your boundaries. One is remember that guilt is not necessarily a bad thing. It's coming to you as a sacred teacher. And what is it here to show you? Number two is try to see where you can feel it in your body and then what your body needs to support moving through the guilt. And then number three is what belief or thought do you have around that? So then you can acknowledge and speak to it. Okay, let me know if this was helpful. Um, Drop it in the comments or DM me some questions if you have them. How do you deal with guilt when you're setting boundaries? This is a big one. So let me know what your thoughts are. Again, my name is Claudia Parada. I'm an associate marriage and family therapist in California and a life coach for first gen Latinas. And I have openings in my practice. So if you're interested in working together or you want to learn more about that, send me a DM or set up a consultation. It's totally free. Yeah, but until next time, we'll talk soon.